Hi, it's Mr. Tapper here to walk you through the Semester 2 Dev looking at the Black Summer Bushfires as part of our Area Study 2 looking at disease and disaster in Year 10 Health, Wealth, Disease, and Disaster. First of all, welcome back. I know this is probably not what you want to see first thing coming back from school holidays in your very first lesson, so I do apologize. I also apologize if the audio for this video is a bit off. I've misplaced my microphone that I usually use for these sort of videos. But we did try and give you guys a bit of extra time to complete the unit before the assessment in term 3. And originally we were going to introduce the assessment at the end of term 3. We thought, you know what, these guys are tired. They probably need a bit of a break. So we pushed the assessment back, but unfortunately it means we are starting it this week. Fortunately, you guys have got a whole week to work on this, whole week of classes. It gives you time to wake up from your school holidays. And hopefully I can answer a few of your questions about the assessment in this video. Otherwise, email me, say something in Google Classroom, or you can speak to me at any point throughout the week. I'm not going to be back on site, but again, reach out to me if you have any concerns, if you think you need extra time for an extension, or if there's one particular question or part of the assessment that you find confusing, just let me know and I'll be happy to help. So, what we are looking at for dev task is the Australian bushfire season in 2019-2020, referred to as Black Summer. So we have looked at this as part of our class slides, part of the curriculum in term 3. And why we are looking at it is because it was devastating. It is, as you know, the title of the unit suggests, it was a disaster. So we're going to be investigating the impact of these fires on the natural environment. So looking at the wildlife, the ecosystems it affected, but also on people, so on the communities, so housing, businesses, and health. So what you'll be putting together is essentially a little report, to outline, here's what happened, here's where it happened, when it happened, why it happened, so the causes, and also the impact of it. So to demonstrate your understanding, you'll outline the location, which is section 1, the causes, which is section 2, and the impact, which is section 3, and I'll walk you through that before the end of this video. And we're not just going to throw you in the deep end of the pool and watch you drown. We've given you a few support resources which will hopefully help you in your research. So what I'm going to do in this video is just scroll through each of these different sections. I'll go through the rubric as well before the end of the video. And I'll see if I can do that in a timely fashion so I don't have another 20-minute video for you guys to have to listen through, especially with the bad audio. Anyway, so section 1 is looking at location and distribution. So the first thing you need to do is, using the research that you are completing independently, and also at the bottom of this page is a nice list of support resources. So using this information and any independent research that you do, you can use the class slides, you can use your own personal notes. Using all that information, what you need to do in question 1 is identify the specific timeline. So start and end of the Black Summer bushfires. Don't just say 2019, 2020. That's not going to get you any marks. And you also need to outline 2 parts of the question. So when did it happen? And why is this considered a disaster? Remember at the beginning of this unit when we looked at the difference between a natural hazard and a disaster? There's something that separates those two. So why is this not just considered a hazard, a hydrometeorological hazard? This is specifically referred to as a natural disaster. Why is that? So you just need to use that space there to type away your little response. Question 2. In light of our continuing remote learning experience, instead of having you guys make your own map, as you did with the human well-being cat looking at Africa, you're just going to be describing a map that's already been made for you. So we've made some changes from last semester in recognition of the fact that remote learning kind of is bad. So what you need to do is use this map to describe the location and distribution of the Black Summer bushfires. In your response, refer to specific geographic terminology. So don't say there's fire, hot stuff in the bottomy part of the map. You say north, south, east, and west. Specific location regions. So don't say there's a fire in, I think that's like where we live, kind of, say New South Wales, Victoria, Newcastle, Blue Mountains, specific names. And then details of the scale or the size and then the density of the fires. So you're looking at, are these fires spread out across the entire country, across the entire state, or are they kind of densely concentrated in a specific part of the country and of each of these 2 states that they were mainly in? Also Mr. Tapley's state of home state of South Australia. But anyway, and then you're just going to use that box to complete your response there. So 3 or 4 sentences, a little mini paragraph for each of these questions. It's not an essay length situation. We have given you a box to write into, but you don't need to fill the box. Alternatively, you do not need to give me a 1-sentence response. It just needs to be good quality response that meets what you need to do in the rubric, which I'll look at later. And that's all I need to do for section 1. So it's literally 2 questions. And I have put this in the description of the assessment task in Google Classroom, but my recommendation, as I mentioned, there'll be 4 or 5 lessons, so about 1 whole week to work on this. My recommendation is you spend 1 or 2 lessons on each of the 3 sections. So that'll give you time to finish this on time and have time to review what you've done, revise and edit, comparing it, what you've done to your rubric to see if you need to make any changes or additions. Section 2, causes. So what you need to do is identify the causes and explain the factors, so those causes, that led to this hazard actually occurring. So what started the bushfires? What made it go from a tiny little ember into a massive fire, from a hazard into a disaster? So identify the specific causes. Don't just say the fire started. Don't give me one cause. There are causes, plural, and explain how they created a bushfire. And that's going to connect nicely into the second question in section 2. Oops, if I can get down there. There we go. Again, for the first semester, we had you guys create the diagram. Second semester, remote learning, bad, trying to help you guys out. So we've given you a diagram. All you need to do is label it. So in the space provided below this question, you'll see, oh, I'm not doing well with my mouse today. There we go. That's where you label each of those stages. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what's happening here in part 1, you put it down there. And what you need to do in addition to labeling it, so identifying the elements of this diagram that show how a bushfire can create its own weather. So one of the reasons why these bushfires were so deadly was the fact that once you start the bushfire, it's capable of almost feeding itself, of almost being self-sustaining. It's creating essentially a firestorm. So its own little weather cycle where it's a cycle of fire starts, fire big, fire results in more fire starting. So what you need to do is label the diagram and explain the different stages involved in this natural process. So step 6 here looks like lightning. I'll give that one to you. That's a freebie. So how is that going to create the fire or contribute to the fire continuing, essentially? So you'd say down here, number 6, lightning. Explanation, explain what's happening, how it contributes to the process. And again, there's only 2 questions for that section. Section 3, this one will probably take you a bit longer because I guess it's got the extended response question at the end there, but I'll talk you through it. Now, in the class slides, at some point, we have gone through SHEET, is what it was called. So basically, we have these fun little acronyms in geography. SHEET is one that we use to describe the different elements or factors that are involved in these sort of disasters and these events. So in any old geography topic, or whether it's a bushfire, or tsunami, or nuclear meltdown, there's going to be different factors that are involved and different causes, different people, and things that are affected. And we can classify them, we can rank them using SHEET. All this information is in the class slides. I'm just repeating it. So we have done a learning task on SHEET as well. So if you have any questions or concerns about it, I've put the SHEET factors, what those initials stand for, right here, in case you've forgotten. But what you need to do in this question here is pick 3 of them. So I could look at social, anything relating to people. So how the bushfires have impacted businesses and health. So fatalities, injuries, deaths, that's going to come under social. So I could talk about social. I could also talk about historical. So anything relating to the history of the region. So maybe 50 years ago, 100 years ago, we cut down a bunch of trees and that resulted in an impact to the bushfire. Environmental, that one's pretty straightforward, is how is it impacting the environment? Economic, that's about the monies, how much the bushfires cost us, a lot. Political, maybe the government made a decision to do something that created the bushfires or impacted the bushfires and made them actually significantly worse. They did. And then T for technological, so that's involving any technology, any machinery that's been used in this bushfire escapades. So it might be the aircraft carriers, the water planes that essentially bomb water onto the bushfires. It might be the fire trucks that the CFA, the Country Fire Authority, have been using. Maybe the technology on those trucks was bad. Maybe it needed to be updated, and this old technology resulted in the bushfires being worse. Anyway, you pick 3. Then in the space provided, you just need to describe the impact of the Black Summer bushfires on those 3 different categories. So you can talk about any of those 3, but you do need to have 3 in that box there to get 4 marks. And again, that's where all those support resources at the bottom are going to help you out. This one's good. 10 impacts of the Australian bushfires. UNEP, that's the United Nations Environmental Protection Agency, essentially. But if you click on any of those links, you'll see I've got some videos, I've got some news articles, I've got some graphs. This one is the link to the documentary that we watched about the Black Summer bushfires. So that's probably a good place to start as well, if you want to rewatch that one. I've got a nice little news article from the conversation talking about the damage to the environment. So I could say 1.8 million hectares, which is an amount of land, were burned in these bushfires. So that would go under environmental impact for the sheet discussion. And here's a quick little video if you don't want to watch the hour-long documentary from Black Summer, talking about the impact of the bushfires. So again, all that information, you're just going to smush it into that box above you. And final question. So last question, 2 questions per section. Final question is a bit of an extended response question. So if the other ones are going to be about 1 mini paragraph, this might be 2 or 3. Evaluate is the key word there. You're not describing, you're not listing, you're evaluating. You need to have an opinion. Evaluate to what extent the Black Summer bushfires were a result of the natural processes versus human activities. So e.g. weather patterns versus deforestation. So were these fires mainly caused by human activities? So we cut down a bunch of trees and that led to the fires, or Mr. Tapley dropped a match in the forest and that caused a fire? Or was it a result of lightning strikes and climate change? Or, you're basically doing a bit of a math equation. To what extent was human or natural causes of this bushfire? So 50%, do you think it was each of these were both equally responsible? Do you think humans are more to blame? Do you think it was mostly out of our control? It was all about the weather. We couldn't really do much about that. You just need to tell me your opinion. Once you've told me your opinion, so first sentence you'd say, I believe that this was the main cause, or they were both equal causes, or whatever. Explain your conclusion with reference to evidence and examples. So if you're arguing, well, actually, this was caused by human activities, you then need to prove it. So you could write a bunch of research about, we've cut down this many trees, we've used this much petrol, climate change has changed the temperature of the earth by this much. Or you might say natural processes, well, actually, these fires were this big, and all of those fires were caused by lightning, or were caused by the firestorms that we had in that diagram up here. Anyway, so that's what you would include in that response there. And we're done. I'm hoping, I haven't seen the timer, but I'm hoping I'm under 20 minutes. But that's what you're doing for your Semester 2 Dev, Black Summer Bushfires. Looking at the Area Study 2, disaster and disease. We start looking at different types of disasters after this assessment task, including diseases, obviously. And then we finish up the end of this unit with our CAT, which is essentially similar to what we did in Area Study 1, where the dev was like a rough draft of what your final CAT would be. Your CAT will also be an investigative report, but you get to choose what type of hazard, what type of disease or disaster that you are researching. So by the end of the term, once you've got an understanding of earthquakes and tsunamis and the Black Plague and COVID-19, you get to pick which one you want to do a bit of research on, and then you prepare a similar sort of report. Now, the final thing I'll say before I wander off is throughout the process of each of these different sections, you should really be looking at your rubric. Don't look at this at the end. Don't look at this at the beginning and then forget about it. As you complete each question, each section, smash through your rubric here. So you can see I've gone and made the criteria for the rubric in brackets connect to a specific part of your dev. So section 1, when we look at the map of the bushfires and we talk about the timeline, so when did these occur, how big were they, that's being assessed in these first 2 bars here. So you're looking at up the top here, because that's what we're aiming for. And what I need to do is use specific detail when I'm describing these bushfires. I need to define what is a hydrometeorological hazard and what is the difference between a hazard and a disaster. Section 1, distribution, that's looking at my map. And I need to provide, a detailed outline of where those fires have occurred, so the distribution, and I need to use proper geographic terminology, specific names and numbers, basically. Section 2, looking at the causes. I need to talk about a range of factors, so not just one cause, but multiple causes, and explain them in detail. Section 2, the annotated diagram. I need to make sure that for each of those steps, each of those parts that I'm labeling on my diagram, I'm not just saying lightning, I am explaining what it is and how it's contributing to the bushfire. Section 3, getting towards the end now. Sheet factors are used to classify and describe the impact of the bushfire using specific evidence in my detailed response. And then the final one, that extended response question where you evaluate to what extent. Range of evidence is used to justify my contention of the extent of natural versus human causes of the Black Summer bushfires. Whew. And that's all I've got to say, guys. Any questions or concerns, please let me know. Make sure you check the due date. Make sure you're checking your rubric throughout the process. And make sure you let me know if you're really struggling, because I know that remote learning was rough, and I know that it sucks that we're back from term 3 remote learning into term 4 remote learning. So school holidays probably felt too short. They certainly did for me. So if you feel like you need a bit of extra help or a lot of extra help, then don't feel shy, don't feel concerned that you're going to be judged harshly for it. I'll be more upset if you don't ask a question, you don't ask for help. Yeah, best of luck, guys. Welcome back. And thank you.